So today we're going to look at Martin Luther King Jr.'s chart using transformational Vedic astrology, using the sidereal, not tropical zodiac, uh, which is much, in my opinion, much more accurate. So we're going to look. He was born in January 15, 1929, at approximately 11:42. They say around noon, in Atlanta, Georgia. And if you look to the eastern horizon when he was born, you would see the sign of Aries, the first sign of Aries, rising at 14 degrees 58 minutes. This becomes the most effective point of every house. So any planet like Mercury that is within 5 degrees, or Venus, has a great impact in his chart. Now, in Transformation Vedic astrology, we look at the Multrikona sign. So many planets rule two signs, but we look at the Multrikona signs, which are 1, 4, 5, 6, 7, 9, and 11, to see what a person came here to work on in this lifetime. So we see the first sign of Aries in the first house. And so Mars is the ruler of Aries, the first sign, and the ruler of that first house. So he came here to fulfill his life purpose, and Mars dealing with uh, helping other people and being of service to humanity, a leader of humanity. And so the fourth sign of Cancer, ruled by Moon, is in the fourth house. And so he came here to have compassion, to nurture other people, to have family, and have happiness through family. You see the sign of Leo, ruled by Sun, in the fifth house. And so in this lifetime, he came to have children and educate others. He was a minister. And then you see the sixth sign of Virgo in the sixth house. You see in Aries' chart, all the signs fall in their natural houses. So he came here to deal with creating harmony where there is conflict, and to heal the nation from its past sins of slavery. You see the seventh sign of Libra in the seventh house, ruled by Venus. And so he in his career as a civil rights leader, relationships were very important. Politics was very important, and partnerships. And so in the ninth house, you see the ninth sign, Sagittarius, ruled by Jupiter. So he came here to spiritually uplift and teach others. Then in the 11th house, you see the 11th sign of Aquarius, leader of humanity, ruled by Saturn, to be in service of others. So those are the main things he came here to work on. What we're going to do first is we're going to look at how the planets are operating, and then we'll look at when they're operating, because not everything happens at once. And then we're going to look at what could have been remedies for his chart. So we see that any planet or any sign, Multicona sign, that falls in the 6th, the 8th, or the 12th house can be challenging. So we see the 6th sign of Virgo in the 6th house. So Virgo is ruled by Mercury becomes functional malefic along with Rahu and Ketu, which are functional malefic for every chart. So we see that Sun is at 2 degrees, and it is ruling this fifth house of children, education, and investments. And it is placed in the career house. So it says that through his leadership and teaching and educating others, that will be his career. So he was a minister for many years, and then he became a civil rights leader to educate and help heal the nation about what was happening. And he, let's see here, yeah, and his son gave him a good intellect. Now, any planet that is less than 5 degrees or greater than 25 degrees becomes weak in either in young age or old age. 20 and Mars is at 29, so that's old age. So they cannot promote or protect their own significations. So Sun indicates father, leadership, organizational skills, and it's again in this house of educating others. Moon is at 26 degrees, slightly weak, and it is so ruling this house of happiness through home life, and it is placed in this house of income, fulfillment of desires, and friendships. So he gained income through compassion for others, for working with the public, and because it is just slightly weak, it put a strain on his family life. Mars is at 29 degrees, so it's very, very weak. It is ruling that first house of life purpose, placed in this house of wealth and recognition and continuation of the marital bond. And so it gave him life purpose through recognition, being famous for improving the racial conflict in the United States. Just a side note, he was a avid follower of Mahatma Gandhi, and that's how he learned to do civil disobedience, so to stand up for the rights. And he was beaten many times and put in jail many times, but followed that teachings of Mahatma Gandhi to win freedom for the African Americans. So Mars, again, like through courage. Now Mars is also courage. It took a lot of courage and courageous speech and action to stand up and to expose to all Americans what kind of mistreatment of African Americans was. Mercury is at 18 degrees. Now remember, we said it can be challenging because it's in this sixth house. So Mercury, this house is a house of healing the United States from the sins of its slavery, and also conflict. And this is also the house of service. So and Mercury is the sign of communication. Through his controversial speech, he helped heal the country. Jupiter is at 8 degrees, and that is ruling this house of good fortune and spiritual leadership. And again, teaching the country to heal its past sins and being of service. It's part of his life purpose, being in that house of life purpose. Venus is at 17 degrees, and it is ruling the house of partnerships and friendships, placed in the house of income and fulfillment of desires. So it was his desire to expose the truth about how um, the African Americans were being treated. And that through a lot of relationships and partnerships, he fulfilled that desire. Saturn is at 2 degrees. So remember, it's weak. It's less than 5 degrees, and it is ruling this house of fulfillment of desires, and it is placed in this house of teaching. So he fulfilled his desires through serving the working class, the American African American society, and and teaching. Now Rahu and K2 are at 5 degrees, so they are placed in this house of obstacles, and the house of uh, re- wealth and recognition. So um, he had desired, I guess, on a subtle level, to be courageous and famous for um, bringing freedom to the African American community, and through a spiritual um, speech. Now, let's look at the timing of events. So he became a minister during a sun period. Sun is leadership. He married during a Mercury period, and Mercury was transiting this house of relationships. His first big march was in 1963 during during a Mars period, which Mars is, very ambitious. It's driven to help people. And then he got a Nobel Peace Prize in 1964. And he also had an extramarital affair. So that was during a moon period. So, moon affecting the family, and also being acknowledged by the public for his courageousness. He gave a very powerful speech for freedom in 1968 during a Mars period, and and then he was murdered in uh, March 4th in 1968 during a Mercury Rahu period. So Rahu can bring you fame and drive and ambition, and it also can take things away. So let's look at where the planets were when he was murdered. So this is a chart that shows the outer circle is where the planets were when he was murdered, and the inner circle is where the planets were, what houses they were in, transiting when he was born. So we see when that he was killed. Now this is end of life and liberation. This 12th house, and you can see Mars and Saturn. Saturn indicator for longevity, and Mars cutting the life short there. Rahu also transiting this house during that Rahu period, bringing calamity to his life. You can see Mercury and Venus also very close together. Mercury, Venus is end of relationship. Mercury is conflict, um, violence to the body. And then Mercury. So yeah, those are the main things that happened. Now, what could we do to strengthen this chart? So we want to transform K2 and Rahu and Mercury. Mercury by helping children, and I think he did a lot of that, um, and inspiring children. He did that, and then helping religious organizations. He definitely did that. Rahu would be help feeding the birds on and helping those who cannot help themselves. He really did all of that kind of work. Um, but then we also want to strengthen his weaker planets. And remember, we said Sun is weak, Moon is weak, Mars is weak. So we can strengthen those by wearing a kavash, which is a locket containing the Devata yantras for those planets. We could also, he could be wearing white as much as possible, red, and sun colors, wearing a ruby, a moonstone, red coral would be helpful. So those are the main things, and listening some chanting, some religious singing, which I'm sure he did. But yeah, he was a very courageous man and very much a big part of American history, and very revered. And actually, yesterday was the day that he's honored in the United States, which is January. I think it was January 21st. So we have Martin Luther King Day in the United States. So thank you for listening. If you're interested in getting a reading, a transformational Vedic reading, which is very accurate and gives you good remedies to strengthen the weak planets in your chart and transform the malefics or the challenging planets so that you have smoother sailing in your life, you can go to vastucreations.com under services, under astrological readings, or if you want to learn how to do transformational Vedic astrology, you can go to AmericanInstituteofVastu.com. Thank you for listening.